this might be one of the best books that I've read this year. Perfectly written just for me. You know what I mean? Why did that just like emotionally gut me so hard?
Hey, how's it going? My name is Gabby. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to a very exciting reading vlog. This is a reading vlog that I've had in mind, you know, like concept-wise for a long time now. You might have heard me mention this at the start of the year that I had this idea where I wanted to do a battle of the celebrity book clubs. Because if you missed it on my channel, I think it was in the year of 2024, I did an entire year-long series where I read all of Reese Witherspoon's book club picks for the year of 2024. And some might say that that was like a stupid thing to do because I don't think that it went very well. I mean, don't get me wrong, I did find a few different like 5-star new favorites by doing that, but most of the picks, like I want to say 9 out of the 12 were books that I was like, yeah, these are not really for me, or that I ended up rating kind of low. And so the year after that, I was like, well, what if I tried to do like a different celebrity book club for the next year? But I just found it so daunting to try and like commit to an entire year of celebrity book club picks. So then I decided for the year of 2026, what I wanted to do instead was to try and do like a month-by-month comparison to see which celebrity book club my taste aligns the most with. And so the original idea for this video was that I was going to be going month by month and kind of like trying a sample of all of the celebrity book club picks. And I know there are a lot of celebrity book club picks to choose from, but the ones that I was hoping to sample from for this video series are like the big 4 celebrity book clubs. So we have Reese Witherspoon with Reese's book club, we have Good Morning America's book club, we have Oprah's book club, and then we have Read with Jenna. Those are the big 4 that like in my mind, they are the most popular celebrity book clubs. I know there are a lot of other ones that I could have done for this. Like I know Dakota Johnson has a book club. I think Dua Lipa has a book club, but I feel like those 4 are like the biggest 4 celebrity book clubs. And so those were the 4 that I was looking at this year. But you know, as they were going through the months of like announcing January books and then February and then March, there were very few books announced by any of these book clubs this year that I was interested in. I was like, oh no. And so by the time that we hit April this year, I had kind of like mentally scrapped this video project because I was like, I'm not excited about any of these books. And then all of a sudden in the month of April, it's like the book club gods heard me complaining or something, because by the month of April, almost every single one of these book clubs ended up choosing a book that I was really excited to read. And in today's reading vlog, we're going to be reading the 4 picks from those celebrity book clubs from the month of April, because these are all books that I actually was already very excited to read, or I already had plans to read most of these. So for Reese Witherspoon's book club for the month of April, she ended up picking the book Into the Blue by Emma Brody, which this is one of my most anticipated books of this year, and I could not be more excited to be reading this one. I actually don't know too much about this one plot-wise. All I've heard is that it's a really epic romance story that spans decades. I've heard this one getting compared to like Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I think the story starts when they're teenagers, and something that I love about this is that she wants to be a writer for SNL. I just heard it's going to be very hard-hitting and very beautiful, so I am so excited to be reading this for this video. And then for Read with Jenna's book club, she ended up picking this one called Upwardbound by Woody Brown, and this is another book that I just recently picked up from the publisher, and I thought it sounded really interesting. This is a story where we follow a handful of different characters who are either working at or living at this adult daycare that's in Los Angeles. You know, I do think out of all of the book clubs, I have a suspicion that Read with Jenna's book club might be the one that is the most aligned with my taste personally, or at least most of her book club picks. Like I want to say like 80 to 90% of her book club picks are things that I would read on my own. Okay, the next one is Oprah's book club pick, and that is Kin. And this is one that I'm excited but also a little bit nervous to read. You know, this author in general has been on my TBR for such a long time. I've never read anything by this author. It's actually the same author that wrote An American Marriage, which is another book that I've been really curious about for a long time. I think the main reason why I've been a little bit nervous to read this one is because I've heard that it's described as one of those like really beautiful, slow-moving literary fiction books that also kind of reads like historical fiction. And historical fiction can be so hit or miss for me. You know, sometimes I really enjoy historical fiction, but I feel like most of the time I find it to be a little bit slow-paced and kind of like hard to get into. But I thought with this book getting announced, like this is definitely the one out of all of her recent book club picks that I'm most interested in reading. And then the final book club, Good Morning America, they ended up selecting the book Yesteryear, which I am so excited about because Yesteryear has already been one of my most anticipated books of the year. I feel like this is one of the most buzzy books right now. Everybody's talking about it. And the cool thing about this book too is that before it even published, Anne Hathaway actually bought the rights to make this into a movie, which is really cool. And I feel like that's a really great sign to me that this book is going to be incredible. And I just can't wait to get into Yesteryear. I've heard incredible things. Like I've heard so many people saying that this is their favorite book of the year so far. We'll just have to see how this video project goes. I'm really hoping that we have some 5-star books on our hands here. Before we do jump into the reading vlog, let me just take a second to thank today's video sponsor, which is EveryPlate, because I know that we've all had those nights where you're staring at the fridge thinking, what am I gonna eat for dinner? Your brain goes blank, you're exhausted, you're tired. Takeout is so expensive, groceries are so expensive, and that's where EveryPlate has been such a game changer for me, because you can get these home-cooked meals delivered right to your door for under $7 each. What's really great about EveryPlate is that they're sending everything with pre-proportioned ingredients, so you're not gonna have any waste at the end, and you'll have restaurant quality meals on the table in 30 minutes for only $6.99 a meal, which is much cheaper than groceries and half the cost of takeout. You know, when it comes to cooking, I'm not the most confident person in the kitchen, and I love that they send these very helpful recipe cards with step-by-step instructions and photos so that I actually do feel like I know what I'm doing in the kitchen. And the Every Plate menu just got an upgrade with bolder flavors, 50% more chicken, double the fresh veggie variety, and 2 homemade pizzas every week. 98% of customers say that Every Plate saves them time and makes dinner less stressful. And the most important part, that the meals are delicious. And I can tell you the same because the other night I ended up making these Kung Pao glazed beef bowls for me and my dad. Oh my god, these beef bowls are so good. I'm especially a big fan of all the Asian inspired dishes that I've made with Every Plate. Like, all of them turn out so good and I end up craving them for days afterward. You can go to everyplate.com right now or click the link down in my description and use my code gabbyreads299 and get $2.99 per meal on your first box and 10% off for a month. That's code gabbyreads299 at everyplate.com. Be sure to use the link down in my description, and thank you so much to Every Plate for sponsoring today's video. And now let's get into the reading vlog.
Calm down, there's no more second guessing. Coming to my senses, he's been here all along. And yeah, he's all mine, right here where I left him. Not taking any chances, I'm coming in hot, asteroid.
Okay, hello, how's it going? I am checking in with my first update for this vlog because I have started reading Into the Blue by Emma Brody today. I put on a blue shirt because it felt right, and I've been doing some reading sprints on my Patreon this afternoon, and I'm now 140 pages into this book, and when I tell you, I am loving this so much already. Everything about this is giving me 5-star energy, and this almost feels like one of those books that was like perfectly written just for me. You know what I mean? It's rare that I get this feeling with a book where I'm just like, oh my god, I feel immediately so seen by this, and I'm just immediately connecting with it and loving the characters. And something that I love about the writing in this book is that it starts with kind of like a flash forward that's taking place in the year 2013, and it's taking place in New York City, which is like one of my favorite places in the world to read about. And I love that even after being 140 pages into the book, like I don't fully understand what was happening in that opening chapter, because it was like they had to act out these different scenes to have different outcomes, and it was like she's gonna save him, and I was like, save him from what? Like, what is going on? And then the story really begins with the flashback to the year 2000. It's taking place in the summer of 2000 when this character AJ was only 17 years old and she was living in Massachusetts. And dude, I loved the first part of this book. There was just something about it because this girl AJ, you know, she's 17 years old and she's working in this video store. I think it's the video store that her family owns. I can't remember if it specified that, but AJ is one of 5 siblings. She has so many brothers and sisters, and she's really obsessed with this show called The Astronomicals. And it's really cool because she's really passionate about writing fan fiction about the show, which is just something that I really love. Oh my god, anytime books kind of like talk about fan fiction and like somebody who loves something that much, I just really relate to fangirls, you know, because I'm such a fangirl myself. And so I immediately connected with AJ as a character. And I love the setup of this book because the love interest is this guy named Noah Drews, and he is an actor. He comes from a family of actors. And in the year 2000, he ends up working in this video store with her. And the thing that's really cool about Noah is that he's actually the nephew or the grandson, I can't remember, but basically his aunt was one of the actresses that was on this show called The Astronomicals. And so he's like related to one of the actors on the show that she's insanely obsessed with, which I think is so fun and so cool. And something that I'm loving about AJ as a character is that she has this dream about writing for SNL one day. Like, that's her life goal, is to be able to write comedy for SNL, which I think is such a fun goal to have. And I love reading about people that have like creative jobs like this. And you know, because Noah's an actor, he's kind of like asking her if she's ever thought about acting. And they start to do these like scenes together where they're practicing acting together, and she starts to find that she does have a love for acting as well. And it's so cute and so wholesome because a lot of this book at the start of it is like them doing these acting lessons together. Dude, there's something about the way that the chemistry between these two characters is already being written. Like, I am so invested. Only 20 pages in, I was like kicking my feet over them. Like, it was so cute. And then there was something that happened around the 60-page mark where I almost cried. Like, bitch, what? I'm just feeling immediately invested in this story. And I did hit part 2 of the book, which is called Into the Blue, and it kind of like changed what's happening in the story. The only thing I had heard about this book is that it's the type of love story that like takes place over like decades of time, and we follow these characters over a big span of years of their lives, and that it's the type of love story where they're just like endlessly pining for each other over years and years and years, which honestly is exactly what I'm in the mood to be reading right now. I've just been in such a big romance mood lately, and I love the yearning that's already happening between these two, only 140 pages in. I'm really loving the story. I'm really connecting with the characters. I feel like each one of these characters have, you know, like complicated relationships with their fathers, and they've definitely definitely been able to relate to each other because of that and be able to talk about their families and like what's going on with their lives. I feel especially connected to Noah's character because of what he has going on with his mother, because his mother is very ill, and like the way that he's been opening up to her about his mother's illness is just so beautiful, but also like tragic. It's just pulling on all of my heartstrings already, and I'm really loving it. So I'm hoping to be able to read a little bit more of this today. I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this one today. I'm actually doing my final sprint right now on Patreon, and then I think I'm going to take a quick walk through the neighborhood because it's such a nice day today. Oh my gosh, the sun is shining. It's like nearly 70 degrees out there. It feels incredible. I would love to try to finish this book up by tomorrow because tomorrow morning I have an appointment to get my glasses prescription updated, which I definitely need to do because it's been a few years since my prescription's been updated and like my eyes are constantly changing. So hopefully my prescription isn't too outdated and my vision hasn't gotten even worse. Like we'll have to see. I don't know. But I'm going to continue with this one and I really hope that it's a 5-star for me because I'm loving it so far.
All I wanted was a little connection, but they only care for their own reflection. I tried to blend in, but I'll never be like them. Out here, I'm someone else. Honey, with your eyes just taste so sweet. Honestly, don't believe a thing they say. So tired of the games. It's not real, it's just pretend.
Okay, hi, hello. It is now the next afternoon and I have some reading updates because I've finished reading Into the Blue. Last night ended up being a really great night because me and my dad, we went to go try this new Asian restaurant that I've never been to before that my dad's been wanting to take me to. And it was really good. I got yakisoba and then my dad got this like poke bowl that was so good. And then this morning I did go to my glasses prescription appointment at Costco and it turns out that my eyes haven't changed too much. So like that's amazing. My right eye is completely the same and then my left eye, they said it changed just a little bit. But I'm so relieved because this is the first time that I've ever gone to the eye doctor and they're like, no, your eyes are good. I've needed glasses for almost my entire life. And it's crazy because every single time that I go to the eye doctor, my vision has been getting like worse and worse and worse. But they did tell me that once I get into my 30s, it should stop fluctuating so much. And it turns out that that's true. So there are some perks of being 30, I guess. But anyway, I wanted to update you because I just finished reading this book and I am kind of sad that like, I don't think this was the perfect 5-star book for me. I think I'm probably going to give this book 4 stars. I mean, don't get me wrong. I really enjoyed this book for the most part and I thought it was freaking fantastic. The writing in this book is absolutely stunning and I felt so connected to these characters in this book. And I actually think it's so impressive how this author managed to make both AJ and Noah feel like such real people. There were a few scenes in this book where I found them to be like a little bit frustrating and like I didn't always agree with their decisions, but I feel like that made them feel even more real to me. And I know you're probably wondering like what happened and why it wasn't 5 stars. I feel like the only reason the second half of this book, it starts to get a little bit repetitive. I actually feel like this could have been cut down by like 100 pages and we would have had almost the same exact story. There were just a lot of scenes in the second half of this book that I didn't feel like were necessary. Like there was a lot of them going from con to con and like doing all these fan conventions. And even though I personally appreciate so much of the commentary about like fandom culture, I think that's amazing because I'm a huge fangirl myself and I love anytime books talk about like fandom culture like this. But I also do think some of that got a little bit repetitive in the second half for me. And then even the romance, while I did love the romance in this book, like I really did, but I also think there was a lot of repetition with the sex scenes in the second half as well. Like I just don't know if I needed as much of it as we got. You know what's so crazy too is that for other people on Goodreads that I'm seeing talk about this book, if they rated it anything lower than 5 stars, a lot of people talk about how the beginning of this book was very slow and that it took them a long time to get into it, but I would actually disagree. I thought the first like 100 to 150 pages were one of the strongest points of this book for me and I was like immediately obsessed. I don't know if that's like an unpopular opinion, but for me, the story started to get really repetitive in the second half of it and that's kind of where it lost me. God, it really sucks though when a book like this was so close to being 5 stars for me because there was literally a few scenes. It was somewhere around the 200 page mark. Like there was something revealed about these characters that like absolutely gutted me. Like I almost cried. And then literally the next chapter, like immediately after that, I was like swooning over them. I was like kicking my feet and screaming. Their connection in this book is so beautiful and so stunning. And I really loved both of their characters. You know, this is definitely the kind of story where it's like the right person in the wrong time. I will say though that something about about AJ's character that bothered me like just a little bit is like the repetition with how she would think about herself in comparison to Noah. Like we would always get these thoughts from her where she was like, oh my god, he's like a really big celebrity and I'm just like a nobody. Like why would anybody care about me? Like that kind of thought was brought up again and again and again, and it was something that I noticed. I was like, girl, get up. So that was a little bit annoying, but like gosh, I can't really complain about this book too much because I loved the writing in this so much. I also feel like this story was like incredibly unique. Like I don't think I've ever really read anything quite like this. I think I was expecting to be a little bit more emotional reading this book than I ended up being. I mean, don't get me wrong, there were definitely some scenes more like towards the middle of the book that almost made me emotional, but then like towards the end of the book, I think I was expecting to be a little bit more emotional, and I guess I just felt a little bit detached by the ending of this for some reason. I think it's because the story was just going on so long, but a 4-star is still a really great rating, and I'm so glad that I finally read this book, and I can definitely see this one ending up on so many people's like favorite books of the year list. It definitely has that kind of a vibe to it. Anyway, it's about 2:30 in the afternoon right now. My only plan for this afternoon is that I'd really like to go to the gym, and I desperately need to like wash my hair after I get home from the gym. But I think while I'm at the gym, I might start reading Upwardbound. I just got the audiobook for this one checked out from my library, and the audiobook is only like 5 hours long, which is really short. Yeah, it turns out this book is only like 185 pages. Like I had no idea it was that short. So I'm gonna get started on this, and like we'll have to see if anything can beat Into the Blue in this video, because this was a very strong 4 stars from me. Reese Witherspoon is off to the races. You know, I'm really glad that I enjoyed another Reese Witherspoon book club pick, because if you know my history with Reese Witherspoon's book club, you know that she is very, very, very hit or miss for me. It's pretty rare that I enjoy a book from Reese Witherspoon's book club, so I'm really glad that this one went as well as it did. Hello, I'm checking in because it is now the next morning and I have a reading update because I've finished reading Upwardbound. Yesterday, I started listening to this book while I was at the gym and I was able to get through a pretty good chunk of it while I was at the gym. I ended up making a really nice dinner last night with my dad. It was this chicken that had this Dijon mustard on it, and then I also put cheese and like crispy onions on it before it went in the oven, and then I served it with like mashed potatoes and green beans. It was so good. And then last night I watched more Supernatural with my mom. We're almost done with season 13 and I've been loving season 13, by the way. It's actually one of my favorite seasons of the show, I think. I don't know, I've just been having a really fun time with it. But anyway, this morning, while I was like finishing curling my hair, because I got ready this morning so that I could film not only my April wrap up, but I also filmed the Summerween announcement this morning. It's been a really great filming day. But while I was getting ready this morning, I ended up finishing Upwardbound on audio, and I really enjoyed this book for the most part. You know, something that I wasn't expecting about this book was that we were going to get so many different perspectives, because this story is actually taking place at this adult daycare that's in Los Angeles, but we follow a number of different characters who are staying at this place. I want to say that this book is divided into maybe like 8 or 9 separate chapters, and in those chapters, almost each chapter follows a different character. I mean, just to name a few of the characters in this book, it says we follow this guy named Carlos, and it says that he is a young aide who lost his mother as a boy and now works there alongside his beloved sister Mariana. We also have this guy George, who is a gentle, non-speaking giant. We have this guy Tom, who's a beautiful young man with cerebral palsy, who's pining after this girl named Anne, and she's like the summer lifeguard at the center's pool. So we follow a number of different characters, like some of them who are actually staying at this place called Upwardbound, and then some of them who are like working there. There were some chapters in this book that I definitely preferred more than others. Like I really, really loved the opening chapter, because we're hearing about this guy's experience with like what it's actually like to be a patient at this place, and he's talking a lot about the difficulties with like being nonverbal. I love how he was saying people can be elitist when it comes to speech, and if you can't communicate, that like people just automatically assume that you're stupid. I love how this character was like going into details about why he had a learning disability and like what they could be doing to better his education, and how different his life would look if he was able to get the kind of education that he deserved. It was also really interesting and really eye-opening to hear about like the different reasons why he couldn't be left on his own, and like why he would even need to be left in a facility like this with like 24/7 care. And there were also some parts of this book that were so dark and like so horrifying to think about, because you know, some of these characters who are nonverbal, they kind of have this fear of like being taken advantage of and like not being able to do anything about it. There was this one line that really stuck with me when he said he can't fight back back, he literally can't stand up for himself. He can't speak to any abuse. He can only hope that no one takes advantage of his vulnerability in order to work off their own pain. And I was like, damn, that is heartbreaking to think about anybody taking advantage of somebody in a situation like this. And I can't imagine that kind of fear. I thought one of the strongest sections in this book was at the start of this chapter, how it was talking about how like books can't teach you to be a human being. This character was talking about how I have listened very carefully to the books my mother has read to me, but there are surprisingly few clues about how to be a human. I struggle with so many of its requirements, and kind of talking about how like humans are supposed to look out for each other and like communicating your feelings is such a big part of being human. And at the end of that paragraph, when they said, so what constitutes humanity for someone who desperately wants to give but is only devised to take? Damn, that is so powerful. I feel like there was so much about this book that was so eye-opening, and like that's why it's so important, I think, to read books about characters who have these kinds of disabilities, because it really puts things into perspective. And like I can't imagine how frustrating it would be to try and like communicate what you're feeling about something but nobody can understand you, or any difficulty with like trying to communicate your feelings in general would be so hard to deal with. It's really awesome too because this book is a debut, by the way, and this author, Woody Brown, became the first non-speaking autistic graduate of UCLA. So like how cool is that to get a story like this from somebody who like truly understands? I'm kind of torn over what I want to rate this book overall though, because you know, like I mentioned, there were some chapters that I enjoyed more than others, and I really enjoyed this book the most whenever we got to read from the perspective of somebody who is like nonverbal or somebody who is actually a patient at this place. But there were some chapters and like some perspectives that I really didn't care for. Like for example, that girl Anne, who's like the lifeguard that's going to be working there for the summer, her chapter was so long. It was like over 40 minutes on the audiobook, and I was like, wow, I don't really care about this. I was kind of like skimming through her part. And then also the ending of this book just felt kind of like shocking and random, and I was like, wait, like that's the ending? Like I was so confused. I had to go back and like listen to the last few minutes of the audiobook because I was like, oh, okay, like the story just wraps up there. And I feel like I wanted a little bit more out of this, at least in the second half. Like I wanted the ending to be a little bit more fleshed out. So like I don't know what I want to rate this overall. It's probably going to be between like a 3.5 and like a 4-star. I really did enjoy this for the most part. I don't think I've ever read a story like this that takes place in an adult daycare facility, and kind of like hearing about the different experiences that these people were having in this facility was very eye-opening to me. So I'm so glad that I read this one, and I would highly recommend it because like I said, the audiobook is only 5 hours. It's a very quick read. So that feels really good. Hopefully we can keep this streak of good books going into these next few books.
It don't fit. I can't wear it. God damn it, just hold steady. It stays bad. Yeah, I said it. I'm the shit, but it don't fit. I'ma do this, I'ma do it anyway. I'ma chew this, you will let go of the So what you want me to say?
Okay, hello. I wanted to check in with a reading update because I have been struggling with this vlog for the last couple of days. I think it's been like 2 or 3 days since I last updated you. And since I have been trying to read so many different things, because as you know, my intention with this video was to end up reading the book Kin. And so I did start this book. I was able to get the ebook checked out from my library on my Kindle. And then as I was starting to read it, I was like, you know, I think I could really benefit from like having the audiobook as well. So I ended up buying the audiobook from Libro, and I was listening to it a few afternoons ago, and I got about like 30% of the way through the audiobook, and I was just like, man, I really don't know if this is the book for me. And even though I do enjoy, you know, like literary fiction that's more about like character building and even like mother and daughter relationships, which this book is definitely all about that, but this book is also historical fiction, which is something that I tend to struggle with sometimes. And like the writing style specifically in this one was just really slow paced. I feel like this is definitely one of those stories that feels like it's more of like a slice of life, and it doesn't really have too much plot. We're kind of going back and forth between two perspectives in this book, and I just really wasn't invested in either perspective. And I set this book down and picked it up again 2 different times, and like honestly, the idea of trying to push through this book right now is making me feel like I'm gonna go into a reading slump because I just don't really care. I've heard that this book does have a very slow start, but I'm just really not invested in the characters or in the story, so I think I am gonna DNF this book because I don't think it's the book for me. And so instead, I was like, okay, well, I need to try something else from Oprah's book club, so I ended up finding this list of like all of the book club picks that she's had over the years, and there were a number of different books on this list that I have had on my TBR, or like books that I've been curious about. And the main 2 that I decided from this list that I was like, okay, I'm gonna download these audiobooks from my library and like give them a shot. There was this one book called Culpability. I was just really intrigued by the cover for that one, and I've heard that that one's kind of like a family drama, almost like a family comedy. Like I've heard there's some comedy involved in that one, so I downloaded that one on audio. And then I also ended up downloading the book The River is Waiting, because that's another one that I've heard is really good, and it's about like fatherhood, and it's about like this guy raising these 2 twins. And then last night I ended up getting like 10 to 20% into both of these audiobooks, and I am just just not vibing with these books. You know, I don't know if it's just me right now because I do tend to like literary fiction like this. I just recently read the book Wellness by Nathan Hill, and that was almost a new 5-star favorite for me. And that was an Oprah book club pick many years ago. And so I do tend to enjoy literary fiction books like this. Sometimes, you know, like these kind of plotless books where it's just kind of like meandering and you just follow these characters in their lives. I don't really know, but I wasn't really connecting with either one of these stories off the bat. And so I am struggling. I think I'm probably going to end up DNFing both of these for now. Like they're just not grabbing my attention right away. And honestly, trying to read all of these different books is making me feel so slumpy, which is the exact opposite feeling of what I want. I guess I'm just really not in the mood for any of these books right now. And I really don't want to like push myself through it just to like not enjoy it. I was thinking one of the only other Oprah book club picks that I was really interested in checking out is the one by Ocean Vuong, because I have loved a book from that author in the past, but also like this newer book from Ocean Vuong is so long. I think it's like over 500 pages. And because I'm just so not in the mood for this type of story right now, I don't want to do it a disservice by trying to read it for this video. So I think I'm going to save that one for a later time when I am in the mood for something like this. So yeah, I guess it's safe to say that the Oprah book club situation has been a complete flop for me. You know, which maybe I shouldn't be that surprised because I do think out of all of these celebrity book clubs that I'm trying to read for this video, I feel like Oprah's book club is the least aligned with like my reading taste, because I feel like typically Oprah's book club picks, a lot of them are like literary fiction that's very like slow paced. She has a lot of historical books. She has a lot of really, really long books that are more about like character studies as opposed to like plot, which again, you know, sometimes that is something that I enjoy, but it's not really like what I gravitate towards as a reader. And I feel like with all of these other book clubs that I'm reading, they tend to include books that are like more aligned with my reading taste, like thrillers and romances, and you know, some literary fiction books that have a bit more of a plot going on. So maybe it is just the case that like Oprah's book club picks just really aren't my kind of books. If there are any books that Oprah's had for her book club that you think that I would enjoy that I haven't tried yet, then definitely let me know. But for now, I need to move on to Yesteryear because that book has been staring me in the face all week and I've just been so excited for it.
Time will tell and sort things out, but you know well as you never will if you don't.
Okay, hello. I wanted to check in with a reading update because I have started reading Yesteryear. I actually just had a really busy weekend, as you probably saw because I recently posted a reading vlog where I did like a weekend reading vlog with my friend Brittany. I'll have it linked down below if you missed it, but it was a really fun weekend and I read a lot of different romance and horror books that I was really excited about. And yesterday, while I was on the drive home, I was able to start listening to Yesteryear on audio, and it was so cute because when I got home last night, my family surprised me with like balloons and with cake and with like a really nice dinner for my 100K celebration on YouTube. I'm just so excited about it, you know, because I've been posting videos here on YouTube for like 11 years now. And to hit this milestone of 100,000 subscribers after all this time, it just feels so incredible. My family's just so sweet to celebrate this milestone with me, so it was a really great night. But I did want to let you know that as of right now, I'm 27% of the way through the book. I actually just hit chapter 14 and I am loving this so far. Oh my god, I love the writing in this book. First of all, the writing is incredible. Something that I didn't know about this audiobook was that it was going to be narrated by Rebecca Lohman, who I know I keep talking about her, but like she's one of my favorite audiobook narrators. She's the one who does the narration on Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. So for some reason, I find her voice insanely comforting and I just love the way that she narrates the audiobooks. So the audiobook is a 10 out of 10 and I would highly recommend listening to this one. But this book has just been absolutely hilarious so far and really like darkly funny, but already like packed full of so much commentary. I mean, the main premise of this story is that you're following this character named Natalie, and she is the mother of 6 children and she has like the most perfect husband and the most perfect life, and she has 8 million followers on her social media who watch her life, and she kind of lives the traditional like trad wife lifestyle. I mean, just listen to the opening line of the synopsis when she says, "My name was Natalie Mills and I am perfect at being alive." She's definitely one of those like frustrating characters that really comes from a place of privilege and she like can't even recognize her own privilege. And it's like anybody who has anything negative to say about her, she refers to them as like the angry women who exist online. She just assumes that anybody that has anything bad to say about her is just jealous of her. I really loved the opening chapter of this book that was just like part 1 of the book, because there's something about her voice and like the way that this character just like thinks that she's better than everyone else. It is so funny. I especially loved at the end of the first chapter where she's like praying to God and she says, "Please give my husband a spine. I'm tired of him needing to borrow mine. Amen." But then I love that part 2 of this book, the story really changes, and this is only like 20 to 30 pages into the book. And it says, until one morning, she wakes up in a life that isn't hers. Her home, her husband, her children, they're all familiar, but something's off. Just yesterday, Natalie was curating photos of homemade jam for her Instagram, and now she's expected to haul firewood and hand wash clothes until her fingers bleed. And it's like she's been transported back in time to like the 1800s, and now she has to be like a trad wife for real. And it's just so funny, you know, because like in her perfect world where she's this like trad wife influencer, you know, like she has a lot of help. Like you see that she has multiple nannies, she has people who help her with her content, they're constantly filming her, and like all of it just seems very staged and like none of it's actually real. So it's so funny, like the idea of a character like this who is so out of touch with reality getting blasted back in time to the actual 1800s that were so brutal. There's been a lot of talk in this book about like religion and like the idea of like having faith, but then also about like motherhood in general. There was actually some stuff that was pretty tough to read in terms of like the labor that she goes through, like the changes happening to her body, the way that she's clearly experiencing some like postpartum depression, but like people are just acting like she's crazy. You know, like the early days of motherhood that like I can't even imagine how brutal that shit is because I'm not a mother myself, but like those were some really tough things to read about. But of course, you know, as expected, there's also a lot of really great commentary in this book about, you know, influencer culture and how everything is staged. And I mean, there's already been a scene so early in the book where one of her kids is like, hey, can you stop filming me? Like, I don't want to be on camera anymore. And I feel like this kind of commentary is just so painfully relevant right now with like the talk about kids on the internet and how kids can't give consent to like being filmed and put on the internet. And it honestly really does break my heart the way that so many kids just get their privacy like totally invaded when their parent is an influencer like this and their whole life just gets posted online. And so not only has there been a lot of really great commentary on so many things, but I also feel like the writing in general has been so beautiful. Like one of the quotes that I really loved is when she said, I'd spent my whole life alone, floating like a specter at the far edges of elementary school friendships, then glaring at the huddled cliques I walked past in middle school, then openly denouncing them in high school. And here, suddenly, was a fundamentally likable person somehow liking me. Is it a choice if there's only one option? I just love that so much, and I love that even though now the story's taking place, you know, like in the past, in the 1800s, I like that we still get these chapters that are kind of like talking about her lifestyle in the present day, and she's kind of like reflecting on her life and like the choices that she's made to get there. I don't know, it's so wild because I don't always love stories that involve motherhood in this way, and I don't always love stories that are about influencers because I feel like sometimes they can be kind of like overdone and like over the top, but there's something about the writing in this book specifically. It is so engaging. I love the voice of this character. Like she is just so darkly funny, and I've been so sucked into this audiobook from the very first page. I'm hoping that I can finish the rest of this book either later today or tomorrow. I mean, right now it's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I actually have some reading sprints starting on my Patreon in about an hour, so I might be able to do a little bit more reading tonight, but I'm actually going to try and prioritize doing some editing tonight instead of reading. But then tomorrow I have a few different errands that I have to do that'll require me to like leave the house, so I'll definitely have more audiobook listening time tomorrow. I also might have to get my like car oil changed tomorrow, and I might have a few things where I'm just kind of like waiting around. So I'll most likely be able to finish this book by tomorrow and let you know my final thoughts.
But heaven sent it. Calm down. There's no more second guessing. Coming to my senses. He's been here all along. And yeah, he's all mine. Right here where I left him. Not taking any chances. We're coming in hot. Asteroid, calm down. There's no more second guessing. Coming to my senses. He's been here all along. And yeah, he's all mine. Right.
Okay, hello. I wanted to check in for the final update of this video because I have finished reading Yesteryear. This morning ended up being a really busy morning. As you saw, I was just like doing a bunch of different errands in Bellingham this morning. I went to Costco to pick up my new glasses. These are the new frames that I got from Warby Parker, but I had to get my prescription updated. I also decided to swing by Barnes & Noble because today the new Nat Cassidy ended up coming out. This is I Know a Place, and apparently Barnes & Noble has this like exclusive edition, which I didn't realize. I needed to use the gift card anyway that I got for Christmas for Barnes & Noble. I still hadn't used it yet. So I ended up picking up this one, and then I also decided to grab a copy of How to Survive Camping. This is another horror novel that I've heard about pretty recently, and I'm actually going to be reading this pretty soon for the video where I read books that you think that I'm going to give 5 stars because this one got recommended. So that's my cute little Barnes & Noble book haul. And then I also went and I got my car oil changed. I just did so many little errands today, and while I was sitting in the coffee shop waiting for my car to get done, I actually finished reading Yesteryear while I was in the coffee shop. And dude, tell me why I nearly like burst into tears in that final final chapter of this book, like, whoa, why did that just like emotionally gut me so hard? And I'm so happy to let you know that not only was this a 5-star, I think this might be one of the best books that I've read this year. That was crazy. I honestly don't know how I feel about the ending because I feel like the ending of this book is just wild. Like, there's so much to unpack. I actually really love the way that this author ended the book in a way because there were so many things that were left kind of like intentionally vague. It really kind of leaves it up to you as the reader to decide what you think is real. Because Natalie is such a narcissistic type of unlikable character for most of the story, it really makes you question her perspective in general, and especially because we do see her character lie so often to other characters. And I am just so flabbergasted over like the last third of this book. Like, what the heck? It's just not exactly what I was expecting, but I think that that's a good thing. Like, this book absolutely had me by the throat. I was listening to the audiobook, you know, while I was driving, and I kept thinking to myself, like, oh my god, that's an amazing quote. Like, I need to underline that in my Kindle. And the amount of annotations that I have on this Kindle is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I'm gonna need to get myself a physical copy of this book because of how much I loved it. And I think I loved this book so much not only because it has such great commentary about influencer culture and about motherhood and like feminism, but the way that her feminism feels so skewed, and like her relationship with God and like her idea of a God and like what God expects of her. There are just so many things I want to get into with talking about this book because there are so many impressive themes, and I think this author handled everything so well. And you know how I mentioned before that like I don't always love stories that follow influencers, but in this particular case, I really liked the way that the story was told because I love that so much of the story we do get to see these flashbacks to kind of like see how she built this empire, you know, and like how she became an influencer in the first place, like how she was able to amass this big of a following in such a little time. And maybe because I'm somebody who like does content creation for a job, I just find it to be really interesting to hear about those details. And I loved getting into this character's head and like her mindset with the way that she's like, I don't need to be liked, I just want to be believed. And like that was really crazy, and the way that she almost cared more about building herself up as a brand as opposed to like a person. And the way it's like all of this feels so fake, but the way that she justifies it is like, I am here to entertain the people, like I am here to provide an escape. And it's like, I wonder if that's really true. Like, I wonder if that is genuinely how influencers like think about their content, especially when they involve like their family and their kids. I'm like, are they really just sitting here trying to justify it as like, I'm entertaining the people, and like what, your children are just gonna suffer for the entertainment of strangers on the internet? It's just a very interesting conversation, and I feel like this book has one of the best commentaries about putting your kids on the internet and how children can't consent to like being in YouTube videos or being on Instagram. There was this one quote that really resonated with me that I feel like captures the entire vibe of this book when she says, the goal of an influencer is not to be lovable and it is not to be unbearable. The goal is to be both at once. In other words, addicting. I just think the voice of this character was absolutely hilarious. Like, she is so darkly funny at times, and I especially loved the way that she would like talk about her husband in her head. There were just so many scenes where she would feel so humiliated by all the different things that her husband would do, and I just found it to be so endlessly entertaining. And the fact that this is a debut book is something that I find to be so insanely impressive. Like, what do you mean? The writing in this book is so freaking good. It's so atmospheric. It just grips you right away, and the voice of this character was so distinct. I just think that's so impressive, you know, because when I heard the synopsis of this book, I really wasn't sure if it was going to be for me because, you know, like I said, I don't like reading about influencers. I don't care necessarily to read about motherhood. And then also religion is something that I don't typically love when it comes to reading books, but because this book had all three of those things, and yet it was so good and it was so engaging and it had such great commentary on all of those things. Dude, I could go on and on all day, but like, I loved Yesteryear. This book is going to be on my mind all the time. I actually think this might make it into my top 5 books that I've read so far this year. There were just so many moments that made me stop and think about things in a different way. So I'm so excited to be ending this video with a glowing review of 5-star. We finally got there. I feel like overall this reading vlog actually went really well, you know, like a lot better than I could have expected. And I actually do think it's very fitting that Good Morning America as a book club is the only book club to get a 5-star for me, at least in this video, because I do think that makes sense in my brain. I mean, just looking at the Good Morning America book club picks from last year, I do think the Good Morning America book club is the book club out of these 4 that probably does align the most with my taste, just in terms of like books that I'm seeking out and like books that I'm wanting to read in general. I mean, don't get me wrong, they definitely do have their fair share of like historical fiction or like fantasy picks, like stuff that doesn't necessarily super intrigue me, but I feel like for the most part, Good Morning America has a lot of picks that do really intrigue me. Like, even though I don't always end up loving them, I think a lot of their selections are books that I am actually interested in reading. This was a really fun experimental video to do. I would love to know if you've read any of these books. What are your thoughts on these books? And also if you have any opinions about like which celebrity book club your taste aligns with the most, I would love to know. Or if you had any other like celebrity book clubs that you follow that you think would be fun to include in future rounds of this potential concept. You'll have to let me know if like like maybe later this year if you'd want to see me do another round of like a battle of the celebrity book clubs, and we'll do a round 2 with like some of the picks coming up this summer. If you want to see that, let me know. But otherwise, thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye!